What do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball Channel. Mick Gillespie here. We're going to talk about Owen Caissie today because the Cubs are actively searching for help to try to get this team right up there with the LA Dodgers, the San Francisco Giants, and some of the other contenders in the National League to get to the World Series. But should they give up their top prospect? At least on my list, Owen Caissie's the top prospect. We're going to get into that and more right here on the Cubs Baseball Channel. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. I ask you guys to do that every single day because you can, because you're smart, because you're the type of people that when you look in the mirror, you know, I'm a winner, and you're not Cardinals fan. Say, gang, thank you for being here. And again, appreciate you so much for hanging. Been a lifelong Cubs fan. People say, how did you become a Cubs fan? Like I said, because of Harry Carey and Steve Stone and WGN television and watching the Cubs every day and falling in love with Rhino and Andre Dawson and Greg Maddux and Sean Dunston and Jody Davis. I mean, I can go down the line. Sarge. I mean, like back in the day, they broke my heart a lot. Okay. So 2016 was amazing. And I'm looking at this year's team, and I'm trying to compare that team to this team, and I'm trying to feel like maybe there's a chance that this team could win a World Series. And I feel like they're missing some pieces. And even with those pieces, I'm not 100% sure, although I will tell you this. They've got some star power, including two all-star starters, and we're going to talk about that coming up. But let me just kind of get into the crux of today's show, and that's Tradable Prospects. I did a whole show, and you guys probably watched it. And if you didn't, go back and watch it, about some of the prospects that I think the Cubs could trade, right? Jackson Wiggins, right? I love the guy, but I think he's a tradable prospect. You know, maybe you want to give up Jordan Wicks. I don't know if I would, but you're going to have to give up pitching to get pitching. And then, you know, I didn't name some of the other guys. You know, I could have put Jonathan Long on there, James Triantos. I put Kevin Alcantara on there. He's an easy trader for me. I think he's good. He kind of reminds me of Dave Winfield, but I don't know if there's a spot for him. But the one guy that I redline on, and the reason I do that is, and I'm going to tell you guys that the LA Dodgers to me are the model franchise. If I'm the Cubs and I get rid of this front office, I'm looking at the LA Dodgers and I'm going to try to figure out, is there someone there? Is there a right-hand man there? Is there someone that I can bring in that's going to take that model and bring it to the Cubs? And you're going to say, well, what? They spent $1 billion. They signed Shohei Ohtani. They signed Mookie Betts. They signed Freddie Freeman. They did. And they've gone out and they signed a lot of people. And their television network is great. All the ancillary programs, awesome. They hit the market at the right time. It doesn't feel like, like college radio and TV. It feels like they go out and get the best possible people. They're on there. It's amazing. Oral Hershiser's on there. It's great, right? They arguably have the best TV in baseball right now. I think the Giants are right up there with them. But they're making money on it. They have more money to spend in that area. That's not my point here. My point is, yeah, they have those dollars and they're spending them on star players, but the work they do with prospects, they don't trade away the best of the best that they have unless they have to, right? We got Michael Busch because there was a log jam. He just didn't have a position, and they didn't want to give him up, but they did. And we went in and we traded him, and he's been very good. Like his second year as a pro, his numbers are good. He's getting better defensively. I think he's on the verge of having a breakout season, and I mean like kind of like a Pete Crow Armstrong type year. It's not there yet, but he's pretty good. He's been, I think about advertised, right? They don't make a lot of those moves, though. They've got guys that are constantly coming up. Like they don't trade their cream of the crop guys. They trade guys and they'll give up prospects, but they don't give up the guys that are difference makers. And that is why I'm concerned about trading Owen Caissie. And I went and crunched all the numbers today because I'm like, okay, why am I so high on Owen Caissie, who I consider the Cubs' top prospect, having seen most of them. Now, I haven't seen some of the guys that they just got, but of the players in the upper levels of the system, to me, Owen Caissie is as good as it gets. I know he strikes out a lot, and I know he's got some holes, right? But when he barrels the ball up, magic happens. He's like Chris Bryant. When he hits the ball in the air, he's like a better than 350 batting average, and he does a lot of damage. I think that when he gets to the major leagues, those things are going to just improve. He's going to be around better technology. He's going to be around big league players. He's going to learn from those guys. The thing I love about this guy, Owen Caissie, is for a young guy, 22 years old, he's like a very mature brain. And he's been like that since he was in high school. Didn't go to any of the parties. All he did was work. And his work ethic is paying off. Second straight year, he's been invited to the Futures game. Didn't get to go last year because of an injury. He's been so consistent. Now, you look at his stats from last year to this year. Obviously the strikeouts are a concern, but power hitters strike out. I think he's got the kind of ability to hit a ton of home runs and a ton of doubles. And I've always found him to be someone that you could count on in the big spots. The other thing is when he's in a favorable count, he's really good. And I think that's only going to get better as he progresses in this game. And I think that's why other teams are looking at him going, hey, that's the player that we targeted. He was a second-round pick, highest drafted Canadian outfielder of all time, right, by the Padres, came to the Cubs in the Yu Darvish trade. He was a really young guy, and he's worked his way up. And they've pushed him up through the system, so he's doing his second year in AAA, got off to a slow start, starting to pick it up again. Any other organization would have had him in the big leagues. And that's just the Cubs' way. There's always somebody better out there. There's always a trade to be made. They rarely look in at the system and say, hey, we're going to give this guy a shot, unless you're like the most mega of prospects, Pete Crow Armstrong and Matt Shaw. Pitching's different, but position player-wise. And then there's a growth pattern that goes with this. But if he was on the White Sox, he'd be in the big leagues right now. If he was on the Rays, the A's, he'd be in the big leagues right now. But he's with the Cubs, and they also have a great outfield. They have it's great. Two of those guys are going to be starting in the All-Star game, right? So where do you put him? Last year, I was shocked when they promoted Kevin Alcantara and not him, just because I just knew he was better, but it could have been just fit, right? Because he's normally a right fielder. I find his right field defense to be really good. I think he takes excellent routes. He's got a strong arm. Does he have great range? No, but positioning wise, you put him there and he makes the plays. I think he's a good outfielder, and I think he's consistent. Then at the plate, he's dangerous. And when you get him in a spot where it's a hitter's count, watch out. And I think that's only going to get better. I think he's a top prospect because he's the type of guy that, to me, that ends up in the big leagues for a long time. And he's going to be one of those guys that's going to continue to work when he gets there. I can't imagine him getting there and the fame and the fortune that you have in the major leagues bring him down, right? So the strikeouts are high, but the home runs and the RBIs are there. I think that's going to continue to develop. The magic that he has, though, is when he touches the ball with his barrel, it jumps. It's like he's got a club at the plate. And I think that that's only going to improve as he's at the major league level. So the Cubs are going to take a risk if Jim Bowden's right and they decide to trade him. They're willing to trade him. And you're hearing Jesse Rogers and Bowden and all these guys talk about the Cubs front office being out there and being super active right now to try to make a move, right? And I think that's a good thing because the Cubs front office knows that. I think the Brewers are okay. I'm just not that concerned about them. I think eventually they'll fade away. The Cardinals, I'm more worried about the Reds, to be honest with you, because I like their pitching. And I also think that they're a team that can score some runs. They put all of those things together. Chase Burns being up there, if they could ever get him and Lodolo and Green together at the same time, they've got the type of rotation that could get locked in and be dangerous. I know a lot of people are looking at the Brewers and they feel like, hey, the Brewers I'm just not sold on them right now. But I'm sold on this Cubs team. I think this Cubs team's going to be solid. I like their offense too much. You look around position by position and they're good. And if they add a third baseman and strengthen the bench, I think those two moves right there are going to help this team a lot. There's the bench is really weak, and And when you put him in, I don't think that any of those guys really scare you that much. You know, you love Turner just because of his personality in the clubhouse and kind of his unique nature and the fact that he's been on some winning teams. But Bruhan and Birdie, Birdie to me is the one you keep just because of his speed. But there's just not a lot going on there. Cubs won the World Series at a great bench. And I think to win a World Series, you need a great bench. You need a guy that can come off, and it's not going to be a huge step down. And so that's why you got to consider trading someone like Owen Caissie. You know, if you're trying to make a deal for Bednar and Keller with the Pirates, this is probably a guy they're saying they want because they'll put him in right field today. If they traded Owen Caissie to the Cubs, he might play right field for them for the next 10 years. He's that type of player to me. And that's why I'm out here saying this. Now, am I saying don't trade him? No, I'm saying if you do, you better get an amazing deal back in return. But I think the Cubs missed an opportunity, and I remember talking about this last year on the show, to put Owen Caissie in the big leagues just so we could see what he looked like. Instead of wasting those at-bats with Kevin Alcantara, who's not going to play on the Cubs. He's not going to be there. They're going to end up releasing him or trading him or something. As much as some people like him, I just don't think he's ever destined to be part of this franchise. But maybe Owen Caissie's kind of under that same umbrella. Now, the other part of this, and I've said this over and over again on here, and I'm going to stand by it, is that if Jed Hoyer trades Owen Caissie and then they don't sign Kyle Tucker, that's grounds right there to get rid of all these guys. And some of that might not even be in their control, right? I mean, they may think that the ownership's going to go out and make a top-notch offer, give them the power to do that, and Tucker still ends up going to the Yankees or still ends up in LA or still, wherever. It doesn't matter to me. You trade this guy, then this is like how the Mets feel right now about Pete Crow Armstrong. And their fans like me were saying at the time, hey, what are we doing? They didn't want to trade Pete Crow Armstrong. They're on this channel saying that. I've talked to them saying that. I remember when it happened. And I'm kind of doing the same thing right now with Owen Caissie, saying, hey, look, this guy stays healthy. These are all stocks, right? Forget about the person. And we love Owen Caissie. I mean, you talk about just a great guy and a hard worker and someone that, in his off season, he spends time working with kids in Canada, pushing baseball, building the game. Like, he's fantastic. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about his ability to change the game with power. I'm talking about having a threat in the lineup every time you come to his spot where you're kind of a little bit worried. Like, if you fall behind, you miss with a couple pitches and you got to throw him a strike, you better watch out. Those are the things I like. I like having those kind of guys in the lineup. I don't think he's going to be a Dave Kingman and strike out a whole. I mean, he's going to strike out some, but I think that eventually he's going to continue to make. He'll eventually figure it out and start making better contact. And I think being around big league hitting coaches, big league players, learning from other major leaguers is only going to help him get better. And that's not a shot at Rick Strickland, because I think he's fantastic too, as hitting coach in AAA. But I'm just saying, just in general, like you're just there, you're watching guys like Kyle Tucker every day or whoever you're playing with. I mean, I guess for him, I don't think that they'd be on the same team, right? Or maybe they would. I don't know. Maybe he's a DH. But at the end of the day, the deal better make the Cubs a whole lot better if they're going to do this. And the other part of it is that you keep hearing reports Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins are, I mean, just busting the phones right now, but the market's slow. And that's because it's just where we are right now. Teams still think they have a chance, or they're still holding out for that better trade. And that's part of it as well. And I think that if they got the right deal at this particular moment, that they would take it. And I don't blame them for that either. I'm not cheering for Jed Hoyer to get fired. I'm pulling for the Cubs to win. And that means I'm pulling for his success. But just as someone that has been around this for a long time, and my perspective, I've seen thousands of guys come and go. There's not a whole lot of players that you look at and go, hey, man, this right here is what you want. And the Cubs had a couple of those guys. Pete Crow Armstrong, we did the same thing in 23. We're talking about him. Took a while. Hey, guess what? Some people feel like he's an MVP right now. I put Owen Caissie right there. Different, but the same. Successful, just very steady. and someone that's going to do everything the right way, not flashy, but consistent. And I think that he's just going to get better and better and better. He's a sponge when it comes to learning. There's some holes. I think they eventually figure that out. Maybe he lays off those pitches that give him trouble, or he figures out a way to hit him. I don't know, but that's what guys do. And it's what, when you're in your early 20s and you're playing with guys that are 26, 27 on average, they're just going to know the game better. Wait until you get to the big leagues. But the great players figure it out. All right. Anyway, we'll see what happens. We'll continue to do videos on what's going to happen at this trade deadline, and we'll see. But he's going to the futures game. I'm glad he got that recognition. I thought he should have gone with Pete Crow Armstrong in 2023, but he's gotten invites the last 2 years, so it's not like he's under the radar anymore. I think a lot of teams want him. Congratulations, though, to Pete Crow Armstrong. I call him Hollywood Pete. Him and Kyle Tucker, all-star starters. Pete Crow Armstrong, arguably the most exciting young player in baseball right now. 20 home runs, 20 RBIs. When Pete goes, the Cubs go, right? And he's going to struggle. It's the nature of the beast. Everybody's paying attention to him right now. But last night, big game against Cleveland, Cubs win. And they'll try to sweep the Guardians in this series. And then the Cardinals come to town. We love the Cardinals. Can't wait. Let's get them. See if we can go another 22 innings without them scoring runs. I like where the Cubs are right now. Matthew Boyd and Shota Imanaga, you know what you're going to get out of those guys. It's time for some of these other pitchers to step up and kind of get back in a groove again. And I'm curious to see who that is. Now, if they don't, Jordan Wicks is a really good possibility to replace somebody in the rotation because he's starting to get back into a groove in Iowa. And I think that's good news for the Cubs. They've developed a lot of pitching depth. And don't forget about Ben Brown. I know he struggled to be consistent in the big leagues, but he's still an option for the Cubs too as we get towards this All-Star break. So we got Cleveland, we got the Cardinals, and heading towards the All-Star break, first place, and you can't argue with it. Cubs with a 3-game lead in the division. Gotta love that. They still have great playoff odds according to FanGraphs. And tonight it'll be Cade Horton back out on the mound against Joey Cantillo for the Guardians. And got to just keep it going, man. Love it. Anyway, like, subscribe, thumbs up. You guys tell me what you think. Always appreciate you being here on the channel. We'll do it again. Not a morning show today, but had a late night at the yard myself. So I wanted to get one out today, though. And wanted to talk about Owen Caissie because I really feel like this guy is an important figure for the Cubs, and they better covet him. And if they do trade him, I hope that they get back the return that makes a difference, because this is one of those deals I'm looking at. I'm going to be very critical of, and who knows, maybe it's a great deal. Maybe another team looks at him like I do, and he turns into the player that I think he's going to. As long as the Cubs get back the score that helps them get to the World Series, I don't care. Hey, you got to win the World Series, but if you do that, you can trade everybody. Anyway, thanks for hanging, guys. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, as I always say, and go Cubs.